Hello and welcome to the Volkswagen Golf Mk5 GTI. Yes, that is a check engine light you see on the dash, but don't worry, Golfs just like to do that from time to time. But today we are in the Gold Coast hinterland and we are going to drive it and see what it's all about.
But let's first talk about how the Mk5 GTI came to be. Started in 1976 with the release of the Mk1 Golf GTI, which at the time was the most widely accepted and universally loved hot hatch. Sure, there were some other performance hatchbacks before it, such as the Alfa Romeo Alfa Sud from around 1974. There was an old Simca, French company, Simca 1100, and there's also the Renault 5. But the Mk1 was the most popular and at the time well received hot hatch. Fast forward to 1983 or thereabouts, then there was the birth of the Mk2 GTI. Same sort of formula, a little bit heavier. Then the early 90s, the Mk3, once again heavier. And then the late 90s, around 1997, the Mk4 Golf GTI. Bigger, heavier, slightly less engaging, and more expensive. What every car enthusiast wants. And it lost the red stripes. And then fast forward to 2006, the Mk5 Golf GTI. Completely redesigned car and put Volkswagen right back in the hot hatch game and completely reinstated its earlier reputation from when the Mk1 came out. And the red stripes came back. Now, before we get it out on the road and drive it, which we absolutely will, I mean, we took it to quite a nice place to do that sort of thing, let's just first touch on a couple of the practical elements, as at the end of the day, it is a Golf and needs to be able to compass the all-roundedness that's expected of hot hatches. The boot's big, 350 litres, so more than enough space. The rear seats, plenty of legroom. This seat is a little bit forward, but not too much, and I'm 6'3", nearly 6'4", and there's quite a lot of headroom. Now, getting into the driver's seat, the driving position, first of all, is excellent. The relationship with your seating position in the wheel, very, very good. And the gear lever and steering wheel are very close together. The seats are very supportive and comfortable. The bolstering is superb. There are two cars that come to mind when I think of really practical interiors. The BMW M5 E39 and this. Everything is very logically laid out. Mirror controls, lights, all very intuitive and easy to use. The actual steering wheel itself is very nice to hold. There's a lot of available holds and areas for your hands to go, and it's not a very big steering wheel, which makes the car feel a bit sportier. The only thing I don't understand is why a car with about a 230-ish km/h top speed has a speedometer that reads 300. Yeah. So, getting the Golf out on the road. First of all, very easy to drive. Clutch action is super light, very easy to use. The gear change is very slick. Not particularly feelsome, but very easy to guide from one gear to the next across the gate. Visibility outside the car, it's got quite a large windscreen, so it gives you the impression that, well, it makes you feel as if you can see more, ultimately, and view over the bonnet is quite nice, as the bonnet's quite sloped, so there's not a lot in the way of you on the road. It doesn't have adaptive damping, but it's not firm enough that you need it. On the open road, when you're going a bit quicker, the car definitely does settle, but around town, well, we're not really in a town environment, but at relatively low speed, it still feels completely civilized and livable. Now, Now the brakes, very touchy at the top of the pedal travel. There is a lot of bite. They are nice and consistent throughout the pedal range though, once you get through that first little bit. And the actual brake pedal is very, very light. So you definitely need minimal brake pressure when you're wanting to stop. The steering is an electric rack, so it lacks a lot in feel. There's not much communication with the front end, but the steering itself is very light and easy, and the speed of the rack is very well judged. It's very reactive right off dead center, and the front end is very keen to turn in. Second gear pull here. Very nice engine. A lot of low down torque, like I said before, about 280 Newton meters, and horsepower wise it's just under 200.
Another aspect I really like about this motor is the way it delivers its power. It's got a lot of top end power up until the soft cut rev limiter that doesn't seem to diminish or drop off. And the torque is made at, well, peak torque is made at 1700 RPM, but there's plenty of usable torque a few hundred RPM lower than that. So ultimately the engine feels very flexible.
The chassis is very good. In typical Golf fashion, it feels secure and very benign. However, at no stage does it feel unplayful. Now, I'm by no means trying to turn this into a Mark 7 versus Mark 5 GTI comparison, because that's not what this video is about. But I think that car has slightly improved road holding abilities, but the rear isn't quite as playful. It's more grown up than this is. And you don't feel that there's anything you're trading with that. This car doesn't feel any less grippy at lower speeds on the road. So its road holding abilities feel nearly as good as the Mark 7, but with a more playful, fun demeanor. And it's lighter. This car, like I said before, only weighs about 1300 kilos, so it feels very chuckable and quite go-kart-like. And it's got a slightly shorter wheelbase, I think only by about 10 centimeters or so, but it's a more fun, chuckable car. This is by no means an understeery car, but when you do find understeer, you'll realise relatively how neutral the chassis balance is. Come off the throttle and the rear of the car will also step out, even at quite slow speeds. So it feels very neutrally balanced, even when you exceed the limits of grip from the front end. It doesn't have a limited slip diff, but it doesn't really have enough horsepower and torque to corrupt the front axle. Sure, on slippy road surfaces, when you really stand on it, depending which way you're cornering, the inside wheel will spin up. But there's no torque steer through the wheel, nor is there any fight, so you can hold the wheel no tighter than you normally would. It doesn't do anything untoward or unnerving in that situation. Once again, effortless. It just goes along with the rest of this car's character. This car is honestly so accomplished. There's nothing really that it doesn't do. Everything about it is easy. Everything's light. The steering, the gear change, the pedal action. It's all so well judged and well balanced. Sure, it mightn't be the most involving drive in the world, but if that's something you wanted, back then you would have owned the current, or then current Megane RS or Civic Type R, or owned something completely different altogether. The interior, the build quality, the driving position, how easy it is and livable it is. And because there's no adaptive damping or adjustable anything on this particular model, that in a way makes it more satisfying to drive, because your inputs entirely dictate whether you want a relaxing drive or a more spirited one. And that is quite appealing when you're just plodding along in traffic or in a mood where you don't really want to be driving quick, but you still want to be somewhat in tune with the car. But even though it's a split personality and multidisciplinary car that is very mature, it doesn't feel too mature or too grown up. It's not as heavy as more modern equivalents, so it feels chuggable. It still has lift-off oversteer when you want it. So overall, whilst it's very, very grown up, it still has a sense of humour and doesn't take itself too seriously. It still has a sense of fun that you can really exploit on the public road. And that makes, well, would make owning one of these very satisfying.
Now, this car was quite significant when it was brand new, but even all this time later in the second-hand market, I think it is still just as relevant. Finding a good example now might be difficult considering the car's age, but if you are able to, hypothetically, good examples on the second-hand market, at least in Australia, go for about 10 to 15,000 Australian dollars. And when you think about how well-rounded of a car this is, I don't think there's many better buys for that price range around.
So there we go, the Golf GTI. An exceptionally balanced car in every area, in all the perfect amounts. It mightn't be quite as engaging or as raw as the old school hot hatches from the 80s and 90s, but it's certainly not as sanitized and remote as the track-focused hot hatches of today's era. This car bridges the gap between those eras perfectly. And I think that makes it a very important car in the motoring world.